We should be considered as equal citizens, worthy of opportunities offered to all faiths and all ethnicities. But we are finding that increasingly we are being left out. Is this really purposeful, or is this just that they forget about us? And that's something we need to talk about.
We have now set the stage, and now we'll reveal the two places where Hindus have been actively rejected. The first one is Advisory Board for Religious Liberty Commission. This is an advisory board of religious leaders and lay. There are three components to this Religious Liberty Commission. The first component is the Advisory Board of Religious Leaders. In that, there are 7 or 8 members. They are all either bishops or rabbis, they are the clergy. The second component to that is the Advisory Board of Legal Experts. Here, there are 6 people. And these are the people who are lawyers and who understand religious liberty and religious freedom. The third component of this advisory board, rather Religious Liberty Commission, is the Advisory Board of Lay Leaders. So people who are not clergy. And this one has 9 members. So there's a total of about 25 people. And you would expect that the third largest religious group in America, if you count all Christians as one group, and then all Jews as one group, and we're not talking about the sects or the traditions within that, and the Muslims as one group and Hindus as one group. Out of 25, there's not a single Hindu in the Religious Liberty Commission. A significant number of Hindus voted for President Trump, especially in the battleground states. And we were very hopeful that Hindus will find a fair representation in such bodies. Because we already know that in USCIRF, there's very little Hindu representation, and people who get represented with Hindu names in USCIRF are almost invariably very anti-Hindu. So we were hoping that with the second Trump administration, we will see a lot more Hindus being represented in these kinds of religious bodies. Now, here is a kicker. Not only there are no Hindus represented here, but there are 2 people here, and I'm sure you're going to talk about them. In the Advisory Board of Lay Leaders, there are 2 Muslims who have some connections to Muslim extremists in the past. And that's a real shocker. And so that I will, at this stage, turn it over to you and see what you have to say about them.
Shocking. I wouldn't be so shocked if they had, let's say, mainstream Muslims, because Hindus are always slighted in these forums. Is it because we don't demand these positions? Maybe we don't. But I think we have been demanding representation in all of these particular forums where influence is important for representation, right? And so USCIRF, like you said, is a place where Hindus have no place. It's always the Christian leaders, particularly missionaries. And recently, in the recent years, a lot of Muslim leaders, clerics with questionable background. And one or two Hindus, one Buddhist sometimes, one Yazidi, and then they go away. So really not a representation of global religions in that particular form. But this is shocking that the White House advisory on religion, right, does not have the global minority religions. And Hinduism is the third largest religion in the world, but also it's a global minority religion. And these names that you mentioned, about 25 of them, I call this group an Abrahamic conclave because it is Abrahamic. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism is represented in it. Nobody else. So what is this a special kind of club? And what is its intent? And I want to say, it's not just Hindus who are upset. It is the conservative Christians who have really been supporting President Trump. They are totally taken aback. And they are being very vocal online. And they're asking, who is vetting these people? And the 2 people that I think we want to mention a particular problem in the lay representation. One is Ismail Royer, a convert to Islam, who was convicted and jailed for 20 years for jihadi actions. And the other one is Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, also with jihadi affiliation. So, why does the White House need people of any religion that are associated with really terror and violent groups? It's just
Mind boggling, absolutely mind boggling. Here, take a look at this. This is their bio. Okay, so these are the two people, as you correctly mentioned. One is Ismail Royer, who is a convert to Islam, and the other one is Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. Now, let's start with Ismail Royer. Now, this person was a known jihadist. I believe he was LET affiliated with Taiba, who served 20 years in prison for terrorist activities that targeted Americans. And he spent 20 years in prison. He got out of the prison in 2017, and in 2025 he is appointed by White House. So
yeah.
obviously somebody did not vet him. The other person is Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. He also lied about the definition of jihad, affiliated with Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. This is the Hamas that was responsible for all the Israelis, all the Jews who were taken from the settlements, and 1,300 of them were killed. He is associated with Hamas. So the first one is trained in Pakistan in jihad, worked with LET, and the other one is affiliated with Hamas. And it's just totally baffling that these are the people who got appointed in a presidential commission. How can that happen?
And I just have a question too. The US has been demanding that Hamas release all of these Israeli hostages and put an end to this Gaza conflict. Hamas is sitting in Qatar and laughing at the US, I would say, because their buddy is now on the White House, this religious advisory council. How does all of these things jive? It doesn't. I think the White House team that is bringing these people on either have a particular agenda or they are clueless. They are
Yeah.
clueless.
And it's not just us as Hindus, but Amy Mack, who has been very vocal on jihad related issues. This is what she wrote. She said, Royer's criminal past, so this is talking about the Ismail Royer. Royer's criminal past and his long history of radical Islamic activity makes the decisions both shocking and deeply concerning. And then she goes on to say, Ismail Royer, a former Hamas linked Council on American Islamic Relations care communications specialist, has a long troubled criminal history. In 2001, police stopped Royer's car for a traffic violation and found an AK 47 style rifle and 219 rounds of ammunition inside the car. In 2003, he was indicted on the charges stemming from his participation in the ongoing jihad in Kashmir. And these appointments were made on the same time when Pahalgam terror attacks had taken place. Within a couple of weeks of that, he went to Pakistan and he actually got trained by the chief perpetrator of violence in Kashmir, Lashkar-e-Taiba, LET, because he wanted to participate in jihad against Hindus. And then she goes on to say that Royer in 2004 pleaded guilty to weapons and explosive charges and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. And during the grand jury testimony, Royer admitted that the primary goal of the cell was to fight the Taliban against the United States forces. So, not just Hindus in Kashmir, but fight against the United States forces. Okay. So, what do you say about that? On the same week, no wonder the same time when Pahalgam attack took place. That is tone deaf. Who in the White House makes these calls?
It is so scary because, you see, this is where I feel like something is totally gone wrong. American lives have been lost because of jihad, right? And particularly because of terrorists who train in Pakistan. And we are ignoring that as a country and enabling and rewarding Pakistan and these people who spent time in jail and admitted to actually working against the interest of United States. Now they are sitting in the White House Council. What are we supposed to make of all of this as any everyday American? Amy Mack is a single woman fighting this global jihad, particularly in the United States. The jihad is in the United States, okay? And Amy Mack and a few others are the big voices calling this out. And also, Laura Lomer has really challenged the White House and asked why these people are in the White House. And these are big questions, good questions, important questions. And we all should be calling the White House and say, what is going on? How are we protected as Americans when you bring the jihadi into the White House? Right? Whose side are they standing on? Whose rights are they going to be supporting? And how do you trust them that they are not working for the Taliban or the ISIS or Al Qaeda anymore? What assurance do you have that these people will do it right by America? I just am totally flabbergasted.
This is a person who took up arms against the United States Armed Forces. And he is now sitting in a White House commission in less than 10 years.
What message does it send to the mischief makers? The message is that keep doing your jihad and America will reward you. Is that the message that the bad guys are the good guys for the White House? I think
See,
that's a terrible message.
we all believe in America first because we live in America, we are American citizens. But having people who have taken up arms against innocent Hindus in Kashmir, this is not putting America first. And I'm not taking a political stand. I know that we have had similar shows where we called out the previous administration when the former vice president was lecturing India and giving moral advice on Kashmir and telling India, we are watching you. And she said that we want, she would use different words, but we would call them terrorists to be handled kindly and things like that. We are bipartisan in our criticism. It is absolutely baffling that we now have out of 25, not a single Hindu member. So where do we go next? What do we do about it?
First, obviously, as citizens, we need to reach out to the White House. We need to make it very clear that this is not the right thing for America to do. It also is a very bad optic, honestly, to the rest of the world that says, here is America preaching to us about war and mediating on behalf of countries to stop. And then you hire the jihadis and bring it into the White House. Absolutely bad optics. But for individuals like us, we have to call our representatives, right? And I want to let all Americans know, especially the Hindu Americans, you just think you say it's okay for you to sit at home and maybe watch something like this and don't do anything at all. That's the wrong thing to do. Because when you call your lawmakers, and I mean your senators and your Congress members, and even the White House or whatever party you belong to, call those party leaders and say, we want accountability. We want these two jihadis out of the White House. Jihadis don't belong. Not just jihadis, no terrorist affiliated person belongs in an organization that represents America. What happens in the White House represents America. These two people don't belong in there. And it's not just these two, there are others too that are coming on board. I'm really worried about who is actually bringing them on board into the White House, into positions of power. These people don't belong here. I think everybody's responsibility is to reach out to your Congress members, reach out to the president, write to the president.
This is a post on X by Andrea Schaefer. She has done some investigative work on Kamsa Yusuf. Yusuf here says that the Ottoman civilization's multiculturalism, which has shown the modern standards by granting minority communities, the Jews, the Shias, the Sunnis, and Kurds, independent court system and administrative autonomy. They allowed minority communities to be completely independent, he explained. That in the regions like Iraq, each group governed its own territory while paying taxes for protection. So he is now endorsing the jizya tax for non-Muslims as a civilization which bore the brunt of the jizya tax for 700 years, from 712, when the first Muslim invasion happened, till the British rule started after 1785. So, about almost 1,000 years of Muslim presence in India. Every time the Muslims ruled India, Hindus were required to pay that tax. And Hamza Yusuf is celebrating the fact that after paying this extortion like tax, some of them were allowed to live peacefully.
He
And
wants to bring that here.
and he's actually counting that as a positive. Indian conquest by Muslims was one of the bloodiest in history. And there are some estimates that almost 100 million Hindus through the 1,000-year period were killed. And those who survived ended up paying this kind of tax.
Mhm. The
And
only way to survive was convert to Islam or pay the jizya. Those were the only two options. And so the Hindus have paid enough taxes to the Muslim conquerors over 700 years. And this jihadi in the White House is celebrating that tax is the way they were showing respect to other communities, allowing these other communities to survive. So we can expect jizya tax from the White House because these two jihadis will be implementing it maybe for the White House.
they will recommend it at least. I don't think
They'll
they'll be able to
recommend it.
implement it, but they will certainly try their best to. See, this is the way the
Mm.
people who are jihadists are making inroads into the American mainstream, and nobody is out there in the mainstream media is calling them out. We are doing our part, and people who are listening to this particular show are all very well educated. They already know the repercussions of having people like Ismail Royer and Hamza Yusuf to be part of this presidential commission. But what about the mainstream? How do we get to the remaining 330 million Americans about the implications of having these people in a presidential commission? So you talked about letting the Congress people know and president about an average American, people who wake up in the morning, go to work, come back, take care of their families, who are hardworking Americans. What about them? Who will tell them this backstory?
I have to say, having worked in American corporate environment for many years, I have a lot of friends who are very devout Christians, and I do talk to them. And they said they're also paying attention. They're looking at all of this, and they're also struggling to make sense of it. They are ensuring that the word is passed amongst the community. I think that's the one thing we can do too. Jay said we can speak about some of this stuff, not to all, because at work politics and religion don't mix very well. But if you have friends in the community, you can talk to them. See, this is not about just a religion coming in. No. We have talked many times, and many other people have talked about it as a civilizational conflict. It's an idea that doesn't believe in democracy. It is an idea that doesn't believe in the freedoms that we enjoy in this country. If you want these freedoms, if you believe in democracy and the institutions we have, you have to take action. That means every American needs to take action. First thing would be call the White House, and everybody can call the White House and say, I want an answer. What are these two Islamist jihadis doing in the White House advice on religion? Secondly, we want them out. We want them out. No jihadis in American administration. That's very important for us to call out and demand.
Do you think there's a lot of Qatar influence in this? Qatar being a promoter, because now they've taken the chief role, right, of promoting these kinds of narratives, these kinds of people around the world. Al Jazeera being based in Qatar and all that. So, what is the role that a country like Qatar plays in this?
Hamas lives in luxury in Qatar, and Qatar and Turkey, particularly, are big funders of these things. I'm curious who puts out this list for the White House to consider, and who is really promoting and saying these people need to be considered. And that's the big problem. So, who are the gatekeepers of this particular effort at the White House? And why are these gatekeepers not doing their job? Qatar is the biggest investor in jihadi narrative in universities in America, and that's what we are seeing.
They've spent what, $600 million in America
Yeah,
to promote their ideology in America through the universities?
and
That's no pocket change.
that's a huge amount of money. And now they have promised the president 1.4 billion investment in America. I would like to see in what areas is that investment coming in. See, I think as an average American, we are now having to look very closely into the arrangements made by the US government with these countries. It's good to be friends with the world, but you have to be a little bit careful about those friendships. You cannot just go say, "You're my best buddy," when yesterday you were maligning them as the worst for America. So, lots of issues are in this one. I don't think it's something we are going to solve right away, but we can all call the White House, call and find out how did these two jihadis get in? We want to know what's the vetting process. How are you going to get rid of the jihadis?
So, Sudha, I hope you left some of your outrage on the table. I hope you didn't use it all up, because the next issue that I'm going to talk about is going to raise your blood pressure even higher. If you think that a president not including Hindus in some presidential commission that may or may not be of any worth was worth getting upset over, the next thing that I'm going to bring up is even more upsetting, if there is such a thing. We all know University of California at Berkeley. We all know the history of Berkeley since 1940s, 50s, 60s. University of California at Berkeley had a proposal from a student in the student senate. They proposed that the University of California at Berkeley, just as it celebrates heritage months for various faiths, various ethnicities, and others, they should officially recognize the Hindu Heritage Month. Now, you'd think that this is a no brainer, right? Because 26 states have recognized it, 9 countries have recognized it, countless, dozens and dozens of towns and cities have recognized it. It's just saying that we recognize the contribution of Hindus to the American society. All it says is that Hindus have brought something positive, and so we celebrate the Hindu faith, Hindu culture, and Hindu achievements. That's all it is. I should know this because, as I was telling you earlier, I conceptualized the Hindu Heritage Month as a national celebration and international celebration. And a person with a Hindu name, Isha Chandar, who is a senator, and I believe she might be a vice president,
Of the
executive VP
student
of the
senate.
Student Senate, she berated the Hindu Heritage Month. She called it a way to promote the extremist Hindu ideology, nationalist Hindu ideology, even though the person who brought up the Hindu Heritage Month resolution was not Indian, was Caribbean. And she engineered the defeat of that proposal. How crazy is that? Where every other kind of culture, faith has that celebration, but not Hindu Heritage Month. So, what do you think about it?
First of all, I want to say, you see, Berkeley is highly Hindu phobic. We know that. They stood with the dismantling global Hindutva, and one of the professors of the deans of that university, also Indian origin, said we got thousands of letters from Hindus to not support dismantling global Hindutva, which became Hinduism by the end of that 3-day activity. And here the professor said, we don't care. We will stand for, we are not going to back off of our support for DGH. So but the fact that this happens in the Student Senate, which is a student leadership organization, right? This is where students can come and learn to be the future leaders of the United States. The Student Senate debated the Hindu Heritage Month proclamation submitted by a Caribbean Hindu, not even an Indian Hindu. And this cowardly Hindu origin student, she might not be a practicing Hindu, but her name is Hindu. She's probably Indian American, born and raised here, but extremely brainwashed. And she dragged in things happening in India, politicized this Hindu Heritage Month, and said it's only fit to be flushed down the toilet. And during the debate, some of the Hindu students took video of what was going on. And it's a very visceral video. Everybody should watch it because some of the students who agreed with Isha Chandar were abusing the students in it just in Taylor, mocking him, showing things like choking him.
What was that about? They were actually making signs as if they were choking
Jason Taylor
who was supporting the
resolution, and he's not Indian. But his point was that the Student Senate in the last few months had approved Arab Heritage Month, the Jewish Heritage Month, Armenian Heritage Month, and Latino Heritage Month. And what was wrong with the Hindu Heritage Month? Because Ajay said, like you said, it only celebrates the Hindu American contributions in America, how we add to the diversity and the variety of traditions that we bring. But of course, Isha Chandar being brainwashed, I blame her parents and herself for not investing time to understand what Hindu Heritage Month is, what it means to stand up as a Hindu, the centuries of death that you mentioned, almost 100 million Hindus died so that an Isha Chandar could live today, assuming that she comes from a Hindu heritage.
the name Chandra be wiped off. Somebody didn't stand up for that name.
Exactly. So she forgot that sacrifice and she says this should be flushed down the toilet. So I want to let you know students have written back. The students at Berkeley have written back to the chancellor and associated students of UC Berkeley Senate that they reconsider their decision, reinstate Hindu Heritage Month, and treat it with equal respect that they treated the Jewish, the Arab, the Armenian, and whatever else that they passed. By rejecting Hindu heritage at Berkeley, Berkeley has shown that they have double standards, a standard for the Hindus and another for everybody else. And that is against the Constitution. We have equal rights. And politicizing something like this, dragging stuff about India in a campus where students like Isha Chandar and other Hindu students live and work and study, these kids don't know what's going on in India. Why is the Senate at UC Berkeley holding the Hindu students to a dual loyalty test when they did not do that with the Arab students and the Jewish students?
Not even a question of loyalty. So I have in front of me the actual resolution that was proposed. And the resolution basically starts with the arrival of Swami Vivekananda, and it talks about the contributions that the Hindus have made and the positive culture that Hindus have brought. It nowhere does it mention India. So it starts by saying that whereas Hinduism was officially introduced to the United States by Swami Vivekananda in 1893 World Parliament of Religions in Chicago, Illinois, and founded the Vedanta Society in San Francisco, California in 1900. And whereas the Hindus are primarily an immigrant community and first started immigrating to the greater Bay Area and the United States in the early 1900s, and so on and so forth. Then it says, whereas most Hindu immigrants have come to the United States as students in search for better economic opportunities or to unite with family members, and how they arrived. And then it talked about the first Hindu temple in the United States was built in San Francisco. We're talking about San Francisco primarily here because UC Berkeley is located just 20, 30 miles away from the city of San Francisco. It's a part of the greater Bay Area for people who are not familiar with the geography. And then it talks about how Hindus have greatly enriched the University of California, Berkeley by teaching numerous students, especially in the academic fields of astrophysics, computer science, engineering, law, planetary science, psychology, and neurosciences, and how whereas 77% of Hindu American adults have college degrees and they contribute so much to America, and so on. And talks about the contributions to California economy and various levels of government as part of public service. And it talks about Hindu organizations, temples, and how they are doing seva or selfless service, and how they're contributing through the richness of the Sanskrit language. And then it says, therefore, be it resolved that ASUC, which is Associate Students of University of California, recognizes and acknowledges the significant contribution made by UC Berkeley community members of Hindu heritage to the greater Berkeley community, and by adoption of this resolution seek to increase awareness and understanding of Hindu community. And that's pretty much it. And then it says, we will, like everywhere else in the world, will celebrate October as the Hindu Heritage Month. Now, Why would anyone reject this resolution? I can think only one reason, and that is just absolute blatant hatred for Hindu Dharma and for the Hindus. And while Isha Chandar engineered this, a whole bunch of other people supported it. And every single student in that associate student body must be held accountable for that.
All the ones who stood with Isha Chandar, because there was a few handful of students who supported the bill, but they were shouted down, they were mocked, and really it's about bigotry and hate and Hindu phobia. This action was Hindu phobic. It was really exhibited by Isha Chandar. I want to let you know, I wish our community was as strong as the Jewish community, with leaders in the business environment who have said, anyone who goes to Columbia and Harvard will not be hired in their companies. But this particular student, I want to say, she's going on to an internship in a law firm. What kind of leader does she make? What if I needed a lawyer and I went to this particular law firm and they assigned her to me? She's already biased against me. How is she going to represent me? She is the wrong kind of leader in America. And I think these people need to be held to task. They cannot be enabled and promoted as leaders because she's really exhibiting bigotry and hatred in her job. She's showing that she has no idea of critical thinking. And the community that stood with her, mocking the other student, shows that they don't know how to behave like leaders, right?
That's unbelievable. I think that video, for anyone who wants to watch that video, is on Hindu on Campus X account, and you should go and see it. I highly recommend people watch that video because she equates the Hindu Heritage Month with the extremist celebration. She also goes on to say that Hindus are oppressors and they should not be given space. And she actively recommends Hindus not be given space. And she says that instead of Hindu Heritage Month, let us celebrate all the religions in South Asia. There's already a celebration happening for Arabs and for Muslims and other people. So, this asymmetry, she wants to promote asymmetry further. And she wants to play a role in wiping the word Hindu off. So, basically, promote cancel culture. I don't think in today's day and age, this kind of statement will go well. This is not the environment where one can use exclusionary language and cancel culture. Does University of Berkeley want to face the wrath of Trump administration by actively making statements? It's one thing to not have Hindus on a commission, and we criticize the Trump administration for that. But at the same time, do you really want to actively make statements that are so hateful against Hindus and still think that your university qualifies for all the taxpayer funds that you're getting? And I think that is a question that at this minute, the administrators of UC Berkeley must be asking themselves that if they don't take corrective action, what are they going to end up facing in terms of, but in order to come to that stage, we will have to have Hindus in Berkeley and outside Berkeley and people who are politically active. So the people who are in Congress, people who are in various political appointed positions, we need them who are Hindus, we need them to speak up and say, hold Berkeley accountable. The biggest challenge for Harvard came from Elsie Stefanik, who is the New York representative who was a Harvard alumni. And she took Harvard to task for having all the anti Semitic policies and other woke policies. We need Hindu alumni from Berkeley to be speaking up right now.
I agree, completely agree that Berkeley needs to be held accountable. But I want to say it's not just Berkeley. We have seen this similar kind of Hindu folk. I have a Sharia professor who has his own institute, and he made comments that Hindus were fighting for Israel and were celebrating the death of Gazans. No Hindu was fighting there. And we called UCLA. I personally called UCLA and I spoke to a director there. I said, you have to retract this statement. I said, that we have condemned. Okay, but what is Hinduphobia? He's yet has not apologized. And then University of California, San Diego, a very well-known university for some biosciences, etc., where our kids go. That school has an ethnic studies department whose publicly stated policy says only Dalits and Muslims will be hired.
We used to say that in all our presentations, we used to put quote. By the way, they removed it from the website.
You can find it though. We find
I
it
think
on
it's
what I'm trying to say is that the University of California, just like California, has become extremely left liberal to the point of excluding communities completely. That is not how publicly funded universities or any university should behave. They should treat all students equally. But what happened at Berkeley shows there is a different standard for Hindus coming from Hindu names and supported by non Hindus standing with that particular executive VP, denigrating, humiliating, and exhibiting bigotry and hatred. And of course, this whole word terminology of South Asia also is really messy. Whitewash.
South Asia is the most
Yeah.
Hindu-phobic term ever invented. It's meant to wipe off the word Hindu. Going back to Hindus on campus, right at the time they posted this about UC Berkeley. One of the students reported to Hindus on campus that my professor, during our first meeting in office hours, made leading questions, which I know if I say no to will harm my performance in the class. Things like the Hindu extremists keep oppressing the minorities. The second time I met her was the day after the attack in Pahalgam, and she casually mentioned the incident and how it happened because of the current government. So blame the victim.
This is the professor demanding that her student agree with her if the student wants a good grade, otherwise face the consequences. That student has not outed that professor. The professor's name must be outed. The same way, like the University of Houston student Vasant Bhatt, he outed that professor who's tried to then justify why he wasn't Hindu-phobic by saying that Hinduism or Hindus are not ancient. And apparently that class was called the lived experience of Hindus. He's not even a Hindu. Lots of things are happening in universities. It's up to the parents to have conversations with your students and say, what's happening with you? How are things going? Are you facing any issues? Because kids do face bullying and harassment. That is the big problem here. If a Hindu student stands up and demands action from ASUC, they can face extreme bullying, harassment, and intimidation from the student.
Absolutely.
This is
And that's the problem, right? And for
needs-
all the positive contributions that Hindus have made, in fact, because of that, maybe they are more susceptible to bullying and they're more susceptible to this kind of intimidation. We have not found a way to overcome bullying on campuses. I don't think that happens as much elsewhere. It doesn't happen in workplaces. It doesn't happen if you have a government job or if you're a CEO of a big company. There's still some amount of hatred, some amount of intimidation. But the kind of bullying we see in high school and kind of intimidation we see in high school, the kind of intimidation we see in colleges, we haven't found a way around it yet.
I think what we want to state here today was give you a couple of examples of where Hindus are not even thought of as worthy of participation. First, I want to call out we have made strides. That's why we have a Tulsi Gabbard in a significant position in the Trump administration. We have Kash Patel. We have other Hindus in high positions. That's because we have talent. But when it comes to religious representation, we are denied or not even an afterthought. So that Abrahamic conclave, that is White House Advisory Council on Religion, must open up. First of all, boot out the two jihadis, bring in representation from the minority religions in the US today. Because we exist and we are here and we vote, not just for one party, but all for both parties. And we are asking for representation. When we pay taxes, we want representation too. So I think that's a big message we need to take back to the White House. And then the Berkeley, I would say, every parent should send letters to the chancellor. Chancellor at berkeley.edu is his email. Please send it to him. Also, you can call their number. Everything is hot. The Berkeley website. Please call and make your voices heard and demand that the Hindu Heritage Month is approved in that student senate and that executive VP is taken out because she has shown that she has no leadership skill. She brings bigotry and hatred, and she needs to be taken off of that particular
Absolutely.
position.
Hey, as we come to the end of this show, I want to make a quick announcement, which is our project for Pakistani Hindu girls. Chingari stands for Coalition for Hindu Girls Abducted and Their Rights. This is about the Hindu girls in Pakistan, as little as 9-year, 10-year, 12-year old, who are abducted from their homes, sometimes while walking to school, sometimes right from their living rooms. And they are forcibly converted and married off to men, converted to Islam, married off to men 2 times, 3 times, 4 times their age, and they're threatened. Some of them are sexually trafficked, and we give voice to these little girls. And so we are partnering with Inside UK advocacy organization in UK and several other organizations. And we have an online gala coming up next Saturday. So let me share the screen and give people information on where they can register. Please register. We have some interesting speakers lined up, including Rajiv Malhotra. Rajiv ji is well known in terms of his writing and done a lot to further the Hindu cause in last 30 years that he's been active. In order to register, please go to chingari.org. That's chingari.org. Chingari.org. The event is called Chingari Global Conclave 2025. The event is on Sunday, June 1st. It is at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 o'clock Pacific Time. Please do register and listen to these interesting speakers. I think we also have Asra Nomani as the other speaker. Asra Nomani is a well known reporter. She has written books and very articulate speaker. So please do register and just educate yourself and tell other people you know about the condition of Hindu girls in Pakistan. Not just Hindu girls, also Christian girls, Sikh girls who also get abducted, who also get persecuted and sexually trafficked. The least we can do is get to know what is happening to fellow Hindus around the world. And if this was happening to any other faith, just so that, and you know this, but for people who don't know, this is not a small problem. As per Pakistani Human Rights Commission, there are 1,000 girls who are abducted every single year. That is 3 a day. If this happened to any other faith in such a targeted manner, you would hear about this endlessly.
On average, 1,000 girls, if you look at the number of years this has been going on, about 78 years of independence, that's like a village of 78,000 girls, right? Gone, killed, murdered, or trafficked, gone. This is one big reason why the population of minorities is plunging in Pakistan, because when you remove girls, it actually collapses those minority communities from inside out. Christian community, the Hindu community, Sikh community, they become the biggest losers. And that is a purposely planned. It's a government and clergy supported methodology of denigrating and destroying the minority community. You just have to imagine the hate that these people have for non Muslims. This is the country of Pakistan. And I want to say the same thing happens in many cases in Bangladesh too. When violence happens, the first thing they do is go grab a Hindu girl and take her away, assault her, and kill her or convert her, marry her off. Imagine if that is your daughter or your niece or your sister. What would you do? Would you stand silent?
We as Hindus have stood silent and we have
We
not
have.
spoken enough about it, and nobody else has. The people who are going to be speaking also include Asra Nomani. Other one is Bhai Mohan Singh from UK, and he has talked about grooming gangs in UK. We also have Nitin Chandwani, who's of course from Sindh, so he'll be able to speak authentically about the issue. Michael Sherlock and Rahul Sur. Rahul Sur leads our Hari initiative for Hindu Pact. Rahul ji is a former IPS officer and also worked at the United Nations peacekeeping force. extensive background in human rights related issues. Again, it's on June 1st at 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Eastern time, and corresponding times everywhere in the world. Please do participate. Please do tell your friends about this event and just educate yourself. With that, we come to end of today's show. We were both quite passionate about the issue we talked about today, and we thank everyone for joining. We had quite a few people join live today. I want to thank everyone who joined. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. Hindu Lounge comes live every week. I urge you to join again next week. Until then, namaste and thank you for joining.